Hey guys, thanks for joining. We'll just wait a few minutes and see if anyone else joins, and then we'll jump right into it. Maybe just give it one more minute and then we'll go. All right. Yeah, I think we can go ahead and get started here. Thanks to you guys who have joined. I'm not sure if any of you were participating in our webinar series at kind of probably the last quarter of last year, but we touched on some of these subjects and some various things, but wanted to kind of kick off the new year with a topic, regarding FERC 881 compliance and beyond, incorporating DLR and some other items. But as we're kind of getting to that point, and the deadline of July 2025 is approaching, we were just wanting to touch on this and just kind of let everyone know that, kind of depending on wherever you are in this journey, there are still options and still time, and really just kind of run through our solutions and answer any questions at the end you may have. So we can go ahead and jump into that and get moving. So the first thing, there we go. First thing we want to do in this presentation is just give you a little bit of background on who Ampassimon is, and just kind of, when we were founded, where we're located, kind of what we focus on specifically. So just kind of give you a little bit of an idea there. Then we are going to jump into a line rating overview, which really isn't going to be anything that you guys aren't aware of, but we kind of want to look at the the different types of line ratings, as well as the different factors that affect those ratings as well. So we can kind of get an idea, whether it's solar radiation or wind or whatever the case may be, the different factors that affect the line, and not only that, but to what extent, and the way why we focus on what we do, given the impacts that they do have on the line. So that'll be the second item. The third is we're going to jump into and take a look at our grid boost line solution, as well as our facility rating solution. So this is where we're actually going to jump in and provide some details on the solutions that we have available, not only for the conductor, but also for the terminal equipment. And not only just talk about the solutions themselves, but also how they can be, either standalone systems or intertwined into one holistic solution, depending on what you're looking for. And, as you'll see, we'll have some examples. We have customers doing it a little bit of every which way, so it's really up to the preference of the utility on that one. Typically, once we get to that point, then once we get past there, the next question that we always get is, okay, what is the expansion to DLR look like? There's so many different topics with the FERC NOPR and GETS getting so much attention at conferences and webinars and things. So a lot of people are always curious as to how we expand our sensorless solutions to our sensor-based solutions. Spoiler alert, the answer is pretty simple and straightforward, but we'll give you a bit of a background on our DLR solution, as well as how that expansion looks. And then Typically, once someone kind of gets an idea and we go through the process of a study that we'll talk about later to be able to get to a point where we can provide someone with a budgetary quote, the next question is, what is the ROI on this? So we've had a calculator that we've kind of used in one-off scenarios in the past, but we've recently just incorporated one into our website where you can go on there and kind of plug in your own numbers and get a feel for what that return on investment looks like for a DLR system. But we'll take a second today and run through that just to give you some familiarity there and what ROI looks like for a typical DLR system. All right. So with that being said, we'll jump into a little bit about who Ampassimon is. And Ampassimon was founded as a dynamic line rating company in 2010. Ultimately, it was a PhD project of a team member who is still with us today, trying to determine what the true rating of lines really is. You know, you have static ratings and seasonal ratings that all make these assumptions or just run flat. But the idea here was to try to determine what the true rating of a line is. So being able to maximize that capacity while also staying within the correct safety protocols, we'll call them, and not creating some sort of overestimation there, as we'll see can occur quite frequently. So yeah, we have about over 80 employees now at the time. Probably needs to be a little updated, and about 68% market share for DLR, with our solutions being deployed in 24 different countries around the globe and on over 200 transmission lines. So after 2010, we had made a move to the US in about 2017. We also have an office in Atlanta, Georgia, where we handle our sales, project management, engineering work out of there. And we also have a partial discharge business in Spain that we had acquired in 2020. So as you can see at the top there, we focus on really two main pillars in the company: capacity optimization and asset health. Today, we're going to talk about capacity optimization, while our asset health focus on our partial discharge monitoring and testing, diagnosing, determining faults in underground cables. On the left, you'll see some of our key customers. DLR as a whole was much more quickly to deploy and be accepted in Europe, so that we have a strong base over there. And as it moved to the US in recent years, especially, we've really seen it, take off and get a lot more recognition and acceptability through the utilities, especially with various things from this FERC order, with the potential FERC DLR ANOPR coming out. There's just a whole bunch of different avenues that have really got it more attention. So that's been great just to have it that way. In the last year, we noticed a large boom in Canada. And not only on the DLR front, it was interesting also on AAR front. So they're looking at those solutions, or potentially building them in-house, kind of however they're doing it. But it's funny to see them taking that consideration, and really what they're doing is just kind of preparing for this FERC order to move north at some point. As well, they want to harness the extra capacity out of their lines. So that is a little bit about who we are. So now we are going to jump into the line rating overview, like I said, and just kind of take a look at what it is that affects the line ratings and the different line ratings that are out there at the moment. So to jump in real quick, we always like to run through this slide. And again, it's nothing that's going to be likely new to any of you, things you guys are aware of in terms of at least the heat sources and sinks, but the operating conditions and the change in those conditions based on certain factors can really be interesting, and something we'll talk about at length through this talk today. But on the right, you'll see a section of a conductor that has essentially two heat sources and two heat sinks. So the heat sources are the solar radiation from the sun, just heating the conductor as it hangs there in the air, as well as the current that is getting pushed through the line, just heating up that line as it moves through. Then we're going to have our two heat sources. The first being radiative cooling, of just losing that heat off the line as it's transferred. And most importantly, what we're going to talk about and harp on a lot today is the wind cooling. Not only just the amount of wind, but also the direction of the wind and the impact that it has on capacity as it hits the line. So as you can see on the left here, we're looking at a few different variables. We're looking at ambient temperature, solar radiation, and wind. On ambient temperature, you'll get about a degree Celsius or so increase or decrease. I'm sorry, a percent or so increase or decrease for every increase or decrease per 1 degree Celsius. So really nothing too crazy, and it's fairly predictable given that temperature is a really um, fairly easy metric for them to forecast. Solar radiation is mostly negligible until you're getting into total eclipse, which is, as we all know, is quite rare. But at that point you'll hit 18%. And then, as you'll see, this is why we're going to talk about wind at length today. It is, I mean, by far and away the most massive factor that impacts the capacity on a line. As we see there, we have 3 feet per second where we're showing, and I mean that's no more than the wind you feel as you're walking down the sidewalk. So it's nothing that isn't there a vast majority of the time. And when that wind at that 3 feet per second hits a conductor at a 45-degree angle, you're looking at about a 35% increase in capacity. And when that switches to hitting that conductor directly perpendicular, it can go up to 44%. So you can see there, so not only just the amount, which you can have a little amount of wind that has a massive impact, but also the direction of the wind. And just kind of for measurement there, what we've noticed and has been studied is that when that 90-degree angle switches from perpendicular to parallel, you can lose about 60% of those gains. So really, it really does matter what the direction the wind is coming from just as much as the amount of wind out there, actually more. Now we're just going to kind of run through the different types of line ratings, and this will lead us into more of our solution-specific talk. So the first thing we're going to look at is, a static line rating, pretty much the most conservative you can have when you're just going to run that same rating all the way through. Whether you buy a conductor or build a new line or whatever the case may be, that is going to come with a static line rating that is applied to it and provided for it. Typically, what we'll see is, most will have likely moved on from a static line rating to some sort of seasonally adjusted rating. And this is where you're obviously getting above the static line rating and factoring in some different temperature metrics, but you're not quite getting to the granularity of an ambient adjusted rating, especially with FERC 881, where we're looking at it on an hourly basis. So this is really just kind of when you're going by season, by ambient temperature, factoring in kind of looking at the way that essentially you're going to have a lower rating in the summer or in the winter, and in the summer it's going to be a lot harder when you have those peaking loads. The next one we're going to look at, and like I said, we'll talk at length today in terms of options and the way you can kind of have different methodologies for ambient adjusted rating. But this is when we're looking at the rating as it adjusts with the time of day and the temperature. So what we're going to look at there is just going to see how those hourly ratings can affect, and then how other metrics can be applied, such as wind and things like that. Overall, you'll see it be quite cyclical in its base version, but there are ways to bring in third-party metrics such as wind and use that in an ambient adjusted way. And the last one is going to be our dynamic line rating. So this is when we are truly going to bring in an accurate wind measurement that is occurring in real time. In our case, measured by a sensor sitting on the conductor. So as you can see with the ambient adjusted ratings, you're looking at a roughly 5 to 10% gain on average. With DLR, it could be anywhere from 10 to 50%. And the biggest thing here that we have is that this value is going to be accurate because it's taken directly from the line. So you don't have to worry about damage to your infrastructure or safety or damage to anything below the conductor, because you're getting an accurate reading from that point. So you're getting to harness all these extra gains without the worry, so to say. And then really kind of one other note here before we move on is really these estimated gains are extremely dependent on the static and seasonal ratings that are used in assumptions. So obviously, if you're using, very aggressive assumptions, or you're using a fixed wind speed that is extremely high, higher than the 2 feet per second that's recommended, that's where you may not see as many of those gains because you're already capitalizing on some, but you're also doing so likely without great visibility. So, dynamic line rating really allows you to have that full scope into the values and comfort value that it goes associated with it. All right. And one last thing before we jump into the solutions themselves was just kind of taking a look at the timeline in the background here. I don't think this is anything, you guys aren't familiar with as well. So yeah, FERC 881 opened, and the idea was to improve the accuracy of transmission lines and get as much out of our grid while being able to lower the costs. It was released in 2021 with ideal full compliance coming by 2025. Obviously there are many ISOs out there who have already seeked extensions or will be seeking. So, that could be a little flexible, but, for most at the moment, it still stands at that July 2025. And yeah, so that's what we're doing. They apply ambient ratings to forecasted ratings for the next 10 days to the impacted transition lines. And those have to be updated every hour. So you always have 240 rolling values, factoring in solar radiation, emergency ratings, etc. So our solutions will make you fully compliant with that. And we can take a look at those in a bit more detail now. So when we want to start looking at this, though, I will kind of go into a couple things. First is, we're going to look at not only just these ratings for the conductor, but also the facility and the terminal equipment themselves. When we first started out having these conversations with utilities, it was largely focused around the conductor. And then as they progressed, there became a lot of them who became more interested in, as interested in the terminal equipment associated on each end of that line as well. So what happened with us in the case is we started down the road with some companies, talking about our solutions, participating in RFPs, things like that. We had, quite a few that said, hey, we're not going to consider a solution that doesn't have a way to, factor in the terminal equipment. So we went out and built a facility rating solution. All utilities have a different approach in which way they want to go about this, whether they want to factor it in or not. We've seen everything from those who have it completely as a requirement to those who don't want to mess with it at all. So it really is up to the approach, and I believe in the FERC 881 order, it describes it as sound engineering practice and kind of leaves it up to that assumption. But yeah, we've seen a little bit of everything on that front. As we're going to jump in here, these are going to be our conductor rating solutions. So we're not talking about the terminal equipment quite yet. We'll get into that. But for here, we will have our conductor line rating options, two of which are ambient adjusted solutions, and one of which is a dynamic line rating solution. So our first two here are Grid Boost Lite and Grid Boost Advanced are ambient adjusted rating solutions, with our Grid Boost DLR obviously being a sensor-based dynamic line rating solution. And on the left and right, you'll see kind of the inputs and outputs of these different solutions. And we'll kind of just work our way down the list here. So as you see, Grid Boost Lite, its inputs are ambient temperature and solar radiation. And what we're doing with this solution here is we're simply applying a fixed wind speed. So whether that's, something uses 2 feet per second or 3 feet per second, that is just plugged in and used as a constant through there. We typically see about 10% gain or so on average with this solution over static ratings. And it's really kind of your minimum to FERC compliance when you're going to take this path. The next option here is our Grid Boost Advanced solution. And as you can see, this will jump up to about a 15% so increase in capacity on average. And really what the difference is here is we're going to factor in wind in a more dynamic way. So we're going to pull in third-party wind we use the weather company. And we're going to be able to use those metrics on the line. So wherever we have these, in the case of our AAR solutions, we call them, we'll place virtual sensors out there and essentially just pull weather data to the lat and longitudes there. We are going to have these out there and just pull these weather metrics into those latitude and longitudes. And what we're going to do from there is apply the wind that is given by the third-party weather company with one pretty large caveat. And that is that third-party wind, even by the weather company, who is the most reputable third-party weather vendor in North America, it's very hard to predict the wind, so it's often not accurate and often over-predicted. So what we want to do here is we have also given the ability to put guardrails on this system. So you can apply a minimum wind speed value. You can apply maximum wind speed value. You can also de-risk the wind and say, hey, whatever comes in from, TWC, we want to use 50% of that value or 75% of that value. So really, this comes down to the risk tolerance of the utility itself and whether it is with Grid Boost Advanced or Grid Boost Lite. We can also assist in doing some weather studies to determine what that fixed value would be or what that de-risking value might be, and so on. So we're also available, if somebody needed assist in that front too. The last one we have here is our Grid Boost Dynamic Line Rating DLR system. And this is where we are going to physically put sensors on the line. And via vibration technology, these sensors are going to measure the wind speed, the sag to within 20 centimeters, regardless of the height. It's going to be able to calculate a mean conductor temperature, and so on. So we're really getting a lot more information here. We're also getting it directly from the line and creating that level of accuracy, above our ambient adjusted solutions. We also have an improved wind forecasting here. So typically when we talk wind, we don't suggest, having forecast more than 3 days in the future just because it's so variable. But with our solution, we are able to increase the accuracy of those forecasts. And we are able to do that by comparing our sensor measured data versus third-party weather data over time and creating correction factors. So as we factor those in and determine that, the misses, call it, in the past compared to what is actually happening on the line, there are correction factors applied and algorithms applied that allow for a more accurate forecast. So overall, these are our three line rating options, both sensorless and sensor-based, and we can jump into these a little bit further. As I said, one of the things I do want to get into real quick, though, and it's why we talked about wind and the importance of it, is just the inaccuracy of it and the need for those guardrails in a Grid Boost Advanced scenario. This is a histogram that just kind of shows the inaccuracies and, like it says here, often optimistic nature of third-party wind. So as you can see, you have the weather provider or the in the red, and then you also have the sensor-based readings in the blue. So on the low end, as you can see noted there in the middle as well, so I'd call it 2.5 meters per second or so or less. The wind speeds are underestimated, so you're not capitalizing on those gains. However, even more scary and dangerous is that once you get past that point, they're overestimated. And as you can see here, even when you get to areas such as 5 meters per second and above, up to 10, there are times where the sensor isn't reading anything, but the weather provider is providing a 5, 7.5, 10 meter large wind speed value, which that's the part where, yes, I mean, your ratings are going to be incredible, but they're not correct. So you're really risking your infrastructure and, the safety and of everything that is below that line, whether it's buildings or forests or people or whatever the case may be. So this is where we, kind of harp on so much about making sure that, if you aren't using a sensor-based solution, to really take the time to make sure that the wind speeds that you're using, have been adjusted to what is accurate and what is known and studied in the area, so that we're not having these misses that could occur if it was just pulled in and used with no alterations. And then, yeah, this is provides a bit of a image into our Grid Boost ADR system. So this line here on the right has our ambient adjusted rating solution applied to it. Gives you a little bit of a look at the HMI there, where it shows you the rating. And it's, as you would expect, very cyclical. You're getting a rating versus time and a forecasted rating versus time. And essentially what you're seeing there is day and night, with a little bit of variation in temperature, given this is Grid Boost Lite. So you'll see that with the ambient adjusted rating, especially, when you're using fixed wind speed, that it's just a very cyclical nature. But this just kind of gives you an idea what it looks like. And, you can adjust the dates out and play with that information to as far as you want. But it shows you not only your forecasted, but your real-time rating, and then your forecasted into the future. This can be a standalone system. Or as we'll see shortly, it can be made in conjunction with our facility rating solution for a more overall view. Just handles the conductor portion, and it does that by bringing in weather and or sensor data, depending on the solutions that you're using, and creating a rating versus time series here in our HMI, where you can kind of get all the information and see the details. It can be software only or sensor based, as we mentioned above. And we do have a lot of flexibility here. So this can be a cloud-based solution. It can be an on-premise solution. It can be integrated into your EMS system. So really, it kind of depends on how you want to handle that and what you're looking to get out of this system. We can kind of amend and assist in any of those ways there. Okay, now what we're going to look at is take a quick look at our facility rating solution. And what we are going to do here is this is just kind of a map of how it is overall as a whole, and then we'll kind of get a look at the HMI here shortly as well. But it's really determining like what is a facility. A facility is, a group of equipment that carries the same current, as you can see there. Essentially what it is a branch joining two substations or terminals with the equipment included on each side and potentially in the middle. As we said, whether you want to incorporate this or not is completely up to the utility itself, based on that sound engineering practice interpretation of the order. But what we're looking at here is, this solution can include parallel branches, whether that's redundant circuit breakers leading to a bus or whatever the case may be. The one thing it cannot do is include branches or tee-off points. Those we're going to have to separate out and set up separate facilities for. It can be made up of various sub-facilities, as we'll see. You can kind of group the equipment however you see fit and wherever it fits in, and we'll kind of get a look at that in the HMI here shortly. But really what it is, equipment often has fixed ratings, but there are standards in place that allow us to ambient adjust it. And really, the ultimate output of this is determining the most limiting piece of equipment, second most limiting piece of equipment in the entire facility as a whole. So here we're looking at terminal equipments, the conductor, everything, and really just factoring everything in to what is that most limiting piece of equipment. So if you kind of look here in this depiction, it gives you a better idea. On the the areas in the orange is where we're looking at our facility rating solution. The areas in the purple are looking at our ADR solution. So as you can see, the facility rating solution, what it does is it provides lookup tables and essentially what you're getting there is the rating versus ambient temperature. So it's providing those spit outs, those lookup tables, while our ADR solution, again, is actually using that wind data, that third party, that sensor data, and really producing that ambient adjusted rating or dynamic line rating. And then what we're doing here is we're taking all that together again and just creating one, an overall most limiting, second most limiting, etc. So as we kind of dig into this a little bit further, we have this picture on the right, and we'll kind of get a little bit more of a better look at it in the next slides as we go forward. But again, this as well can be a standalone system. And we'll get into it further too, but these systems can also be linked up to where they look at each other. But what this is doing specifically is it's creating and managing lookup tables of ambient adjusted ratings for all of the equipment, not just the facility equipment, not just the terminal equipment, not just the conductor. This is where it's really bringing it all in together. And what you're doing is looking at ambient temperature versus rating. We're automatically determining the most limiting element and rating for every temperature level. So if you can see in here, it has the different temperature spans as we're going through here, and the rating and the piece of equipment noted by the color for each one of those that it applies to. And this will be a little bit easier to see on the next slide where we blow it all up. But it can also manage seasonal ratings. It can have day and night associated with it. And as well, when you make adjustments in this system, not only does it track all these changes, but it also makes the change request be approved. So nothing can be done without it being an approval and actually being changed in the system. This is where I think it gives you a little bit better look at the system itself. So as you can see over here on the left, you have these facilities and sub-facilities. So you have a northern region, a substation Bravo, and then it starts breaking down into the transformers and all the different equipment. And this is where I think it really kind of gives you an idea of how this looks like as a whole. So as we're on this first sub-facility here, we can see all the equipment associated with it. Disconnection switches, circuit breakers, whatever the case may be. And then it has these limit symbols that are applied down in the graphical image below, which is then kind of showing the, or I should say table image below, which is showing the different ratings and which is going to be the most limiting based on those. In terms of the amount of ratings, we can have, I mean, here you have normal, short-term, long-term, various others. You can have as many or few as you want. And then on the right, it graphs it out. So that's where you're able to graphically see the most limiting piece of equipment. And as you scroll through that graph, it'll give you the rating for each piece, so each piece of equipment associated and included in that graph. So it's really kind of what we're looking here on the facility rating side is just bringing all that equipment in, comparing it over different temperature levels, and determining what is the most limiting element of those facilities. And I know this was kind of a quick run through, and it's much easier to see in a demonstration. We have a different webinar that we did earlier. It was kind of mid-late last year that includes a demonstration of these solutions. So if you'd like those to have a bit more detail and just kind of clear that up a bit, we'd be more than happy to share those as well. But what I wanted to get to was just this overall image here, and this shows how these two systems, our facility rating system and our Passamon dynamic rating system, can be brought together. What should be known here is our Passamon dynamic rating system runs all the time, getting weather data, forecast data, sensor data, calculating real-time and forecasted ratings, etc. And what it does, as you can see, it takes all this, creates these ratings, does these calculations, and it can provide it out into EMS and market systems. So again, this could be a standalone system that does this and runs these calculations every 5 minutes, 24/7, 365, and provides this information to you. So those would be our GridBoost Advanced, GridBoost Lite, and GridBoost DLR solutions. Then when you get over here on the left side of it, we get into these facility ratings. Our facility is obviously, that's the rating handling the terminal equipment, seasonal ratings, and producing ambient adjusted based rating lookup tables. Facility ratings is a asynchronous system and runs only when needed, producing those lookup tables of ratings versus ambient temperature. Typically what we've seen in the past is that it's done via some sort of a homebrew system or detailed Excel spreadsheet. And so this is a way that we can really organize that better and not only have it more organized and produce the spit out of those lookup tables, but it can also be purchased individually or linked together with our ADR system, just creating an entire complete solution for the entire conductor, including those terminal stations. We have seen and have customers who have done this about every which way. So we do have a customer that specifically uses facility ratings to accomplish FERC 881 compliance and just uses those lookup tables. There are plenty of systems out there that accept those lookup tables. So we have some that have just chosen to go that route. Very economical and compliant way to go, while it also allows the upgrade to DLR in the future, should they wish. We have customers who just use Passamon's ADR system. So they are using that solely, factoring in wind and variable wind. They've chosen our grid, for example, has chosen our GridBoost Advanced solution. And they exist in a climate where it's a very warm climate, but they've also noticed that as it gets warmer, it gets windier. So they have that to their advantage as summer comes in and you're running those peak loads. They do get more wind to their advantage there. So we've designed a way to increase their wind speeds incrementally for various different temperature ranges. So it does have that flexibility, if that's something you're looking for and you live in a unique climate, we can amend, certain things in the system to fit. As well, we have another customer who has chosen to use both systems together. They'll have the facility rating solution for the terminal equipment, and that will feed into the ADR system and create that most limiting element as we saw. They also use our ADR and Grid Boost Advanced system. And in there, what they've done is, while they don't have the kind of the same ramp up of the one we had talked about before, they had set certain temperature ranges for wind. They also had noticed that it gets a little windier as warmer. So at a certain area, they're using a couple feet per second, then 3 feet per second, then 4 feet per second wind as in certain different temperature ranges. So there are ways the system can be customized to fit your specific needs or specific environmental conditions that you've seen. And as a whole, you can, with these solutions combined, or you can meet NERC FAC 08 compliance, you can meet FERC 881 compliance. There's various different, methodologies you can use and choose from, and in the systems, even creating your own or just using linear fixed rating systems. And it really just kind of gets you set up for not only FERC 881, but allows you for that next step into DLR. And one final thing to note here is, again, these systems can be cloud-based. They can be on-prem. We can integrate them into your EMS system. It really creates that entire end-to-end solution, going from facilities to EMS to market systems, all intertwined, if that's what you're looking for. All right. And now the next thing we're going to do is we'll go through this and kind of go through this a little bit quickly here, but give you a rundown of our dynamic line rating solution. It has, like I said, we always get that question once we pass out whether it's facility ratings or AAR, is kind of, what is the next step to expanding DLR? The FERC ANOPR that came out recently has drawn a lot of interest in this, and the technology as a whole has just become much more refined and accepted to what it used to be. And not only on that front, beyond even just dynamic line rating, we have the ability to put in tension sensors into the sensor itself, so we can measure ice accretion and galloping, and expand really beyond even a specific dynamic line rating use case, but we have others who even use that as the more primary function of our systems. So this just gives you a quick rundown of our sensor. It's a vibration-based sensor, and like I said, through vibration, we're going to calculate the perpendicular wind speed, the sag, the mead conductor temperature, and provide those metrics to you in calculations, and allow those to be the direct driving monitors of your system. It is self-powered, inductively powered from the line, from 10 kV up to I think we need to change that to 800 kV, so we can put this on really any line that you may have out there. We talked about the embedded tension sensor for ice and potential galloping. We can do it live line, and that can be done or during an outage, either way, via helicopter or bucket truck, or in the very near future here, we will have our drone deployable sensor released. So that's going to be our Sense X that we're real excited about and is coming out here shortly. We can integrate into EMS through various different protocols. The sensor has the capability to communicate via cellular or satellite communication, so we can use it in some remote areas. And then again, we talked about that machine learning algorithm to really increase and create the most accurate forecasts, especially when wind is such a hard thing to forecast. This is where just a quick look at how we measure winds. Like I said, it's vibration based. We'll go through this, a little quick. So a couple other things we want to get to, but essentially what happens is at less than 2 meters per second, we're measuring the turbulent vibrations that occur as they pass over top of the line, the aeolian vibrations. And then once we pass that 2 meters per second, we're going into a swing angle measurement. And essentially what we're doing here is measuring the force needed to displace the conductor. And this happens without any need on your part. It happens automatically. So it will automatically switch between these two methodologies depending on how fast that wind is coming. This is a look at our DLR interface. So I know we looked at the AAR just 10 minutes ago or so. This is what DLR looks like. So here you can see on the very bottom, you can see your load, followed by, as you work your way up, your static rating, just running flat across there. And then on the left side of this dotted line, you will see in the orange, you have your real-time rating. I'm sorry. Yeah, real-time rating. And in the green, you have your forecasted rating. And so obviously what you'll see is our moving forward then is you have those forecasts into the future. So really what we ideally have is our real-time rating is going to be the one that is we make a very conservative value, and our forecasts are conservative on that, because the last thing we want you to do is end up having planned for more capacity than you have. So we don't want anyone to have to deal with these various redispatch costs and the issues that come along with that. So as this moves along, and kind of you'll see into the future, there are three different metrics here in terms of the forecasting. So you have a high confidence forecast, low confidence, and mid confidence are essentially these three as you're moving into the future here. And these are adjustable. So as you can see over here on the right, there's a 98% confidence interval that is you are able to adjust. And essentially what is that saying is my real-time rating is going to be less than my forecasted rating 98% of the time. So we don't, like I said, we don't want you to cross over and have to pay those dispatch costs, but this is also a configurable value. We tend to side more on the conservative side, but you can change that as well. This is just kind of a quick look through of the HMI here of our DLR system. And as we move forward, just the comparison of a couple lines. So I know that when we start getting into talking about dynamic line rating, accuracy is something that comes in with it, and the potential for derates, which are there, to be honest. And you'll see in one of these examples that it occurs. The one on the left is pretty much the most ideal dynamic line rating scenario ever. In a Nordic climate that is cold, that is windy, that started with conservative static line ratings, it truly has no derates. You're getting 25% gain 99% of the time, up to a 250% gain. At the lower percentage time, but I mean that is it doesn't get more ideal than that, and it has everything going for it, starting with, like we mentioned earlier, with that conservative static line rating that allows you to capture those more gains. But as we get into the potential and discussing derates and being open about that, we noticed in the FERC ANOPR it wasn't something that they seemed to want to talk about all that much. But then we look at a different type of climate. We look at a warm and a desert climate that started with an optimistic static line rating, likely stemming from a higher wind speed. And here you are going to see derates. As you can see on the graph at 90%, the dynamic line rating does fall below that static line rating value. So that does happen 10% of the time. But what you're really looking for here is the overall capacity gain coming from it, and making sure that gain, the other 90% of the time, offsets that 10. So even when you're looking at it here, you're seeing over 15% gain versus static line rating on average, 50% of the time. So when you're talking about having that in a warm desert climate with a non-optimistic static line rating, it's still a great result. But there are going to be times where it derates, and that's just dealt with. But as a whole, you're still going to come out ahead in the long run. Lastly, we just kind of had a quick summary slide before jumping into the ROI calculator, and really, ultimately, what we wanted to get across here is the large takeaway that the Grid Boost suite, Grid Boost ADR and Grid Boost facility ratings, can model the conductor and terminal equipment with a fixed or ambient adjusted rating and create an entire solution determining that most limiting element. Like I said, they can be used individually, but we can also use them in conjunction with each other to give you that most complete picture and most accurate line rating. All right. Now we just wanted to jump into one more thing, and I know it was the last one that we had on our list, and it was, once we've completed an ADR view study where we get some information from you, whether it's some conductor information, some rating information, a KML file of your line, we're able to build a model of it in our back end and run a simulation that allows us, with an output of giving us the number of sensors, the placement of sensors, allows us to produce a budgetary quote for you. But in this example here, the biggest thing that it does is it applies a year's worth of past weather data, and it provides what your dynamic line rating gains would have been versus your assumed ratings over that period of time. So what we're going to do here is just kind of run through a quick example, and we'll kind of set it back to 0 here. And the first thing it's going to ask you for is your static line rating. So we are just going to go ahead and plug in an assumed value. Say our static line rating is 500 MVA. And then what we're going to do here is just dump in 20% expected capacity gains. As we saw, you can expect that roughly on average. And then we also kind of have some info buttons here, for certain of these fields to guide you. So, here it says, recommended values are between 10 and 50, with 10 and 20 being a low average. So we're just going to go ahead and use 20. We don't want to, throw anything out there ridiculously unrealistic in this. So that is going to calculate, and since I'm so good at math and, could have done this in my head, it will give you the 600 value. So obviously it's just 500 plus 20, and we come to this 600 MVA. As we move over to the right here, we're going to look at the difference between the static line rating and the dynamic line rating. So we're going to take that 100 MVA gain and turn that into megawatts. So we're going to do that by using a power factor of 0.9. So really, obviously, by doing that, we're taking this 100 times 0.9 and going from 100 MVA to 90 megawatts. And, as you can see here, it just kind of just explains that movement. And the next thing we're going to do is turn it into megawatt hours. So we're going to take this 90 times 365 times 24, as noted here, designated by the calculator, to come up with this 788,400 megawatt per hour gain. Now, when we go into kind of putting the financials into it, that's if you're assuming that this congestion or constraints are occurring 100% of the time, which is not realistic at all. So we take a minority of the time and apply this. So that's what we've done down here. We're taking the 788,400 megawatts and saying, hey, this occurs 5% of the time. So when it occurs 5% of the time, we're taking that number times 5%, and we're coming out with 39,420 megawatt hours. Is what we're looking at for the gain here using the metrics we've plugged in so far. The next step is to really look at the monetary portion of this. So as you'll see here in the little indicator, it's going to talk about how each region is going to have a certain price associated with it. On average, we suggest, after doing some research, using 18, but use whatever that is you would like here for a 5-minute market price. While it also notes that congestion values can be significantly more, in the magnitude of 4 times higher. So what we're going to do here is just start with the 18 suggested, and that 39,420 times 18 will bring us to that monetized capacity gain of $709,560. Now, what we're doing there is, as you see there, there's a dynamic line rating system price. We just threw in a very generic value of 500,000. This is an extremely variable number based on the length of the line, the orientation changes of the line, which all determine the number of sensors that need to have. Obviously, a 10-mile line is going to have far fewer than a 200-mile line. So we just kind of threw this out as a generic number. It could be far less, or it could be quite a bit more depending on the line in question. But even with what we have now, we're looking at a 0.7-year return on investment. So even taking these conservative assumptions, we're looking at just over a half of a year ROI on a line such as this. Now, if we kind of want to take it a step further and say, okay, this set up to 4 times more, we're going to take it at $50. Then you're looking at 3 months return, 3 months ROI in your system. So really, I didn't really want to dive into the specific numbers here because these are extremely adjustable, and you would know your own specific numbers far more than we would. But just this is a tool that is out there on our website to allow you to evaluate the cost once you kind of have that. And we are more than happy to run that ADR view study to give you all the metrics you need to be able to associate these costs with them. So with, let's see here real quick. With that being said, I know we're very much nearing the end of our time. I think we got about 10 minutes left. So I just kind of wanted to open up the forum to any questions that you all may have, and see if there's anything we can answer prior to departing here. Any questions at all?
Yeah, I can't see any questions coming through on the system here. If anyone wants to just raise, just pop a note in the chat. We can also take you off mute if you'd like to raise a question. But otherwise, Corey, that was a fantastic presentation. Thank you very much. Quite a lot in it actually. I think you covered a lot of content. I do encourage you guys, the calculator that Corey showed there, it's on our website. I think, Corey, if you can maybe pop the link just in the chat there.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and try it out yourself. If you have any questions, just let us know. And otherwise, yeah, we're always happy to be in touch via email or anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you guys all for joining. As I kind of mentioned earlier in the presentation too, we did do a webinar series last fall where we had various sessions over various topics. I know we kind of did everything a little bit high level today, but those dive in much deeper into the solutions, the demos, case studies, things like that. So if there are specific topics that we covered today, obviously, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions directly. But I would encourage you to also visit the website and take a look. And all those webinars, I believe, are the topics and things are posted there. So if there's a recording or anything we can provide, please let us know on that front as well. And yeah, with that being said, if there are no questions, we'll go ahead and kind of call today. Oh, well, thank you. I thought we had a question. We'll go ahead and call it a day there. And yeah, please reach out if there's anything we can help you with.
Great. Thanks, Corey.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Bye.
Cheers.